Who am I? Hello and welcome back to the Easy English podcast. And today is a little bit different from the rest of the episodes. I want to talk a little bit about who I am, about my story and why I created this podcast. What has happened over the last number of years with this podcast, how it has changed, and also a little bit about how you can become more involved with this podcast. My name's Oliver, and I am the host of Easy English. And believe it or not, I started Easy English. I first created the podcast 5 years ago. And that's where the idea for this episode came from. When I first created the podcast, I made some very poor quality short episodes with bad microphone sound, which I have since deleted. And I think the oldest episode that is still available is one from July back in 2020. So almost 5 years ago. And this episode was called Who Am I? And what is this podcast? And it is the most viewed episode of the podcast, even today. So I thought it would be very helpful to make a new updated episode because as I'm speaking to you guys every week and teaching you English, helping you to practice, I would like you to know a little bit more about me, to get to know me a little bit better, you could say. It's great talking about different topics and themes, but if you're new to the show, you probably don't know very much about who I am or what this podcast is. This podcast has grown by over 10 times in the last 3 to 4 months. So almost everyone listening to this podcast right now is brand new. You're very new to the podcast, and welcome. So let's go back to the beginning. How did I create this podcast? Maybe a bit about my history and my background. So as most of you know, I am from the UK. I grew up in a place called Northern Ireland, a region of the UK. Outside of a city, the capital city of Northern Ireland, Belfast. It's a very small city, and I've talked about it in some of my previous episodes. And when I finished school, I decided to go to university in the capital of Scotland, the University of Edinburgh, which is a fantastic city. And I chose to study politics and Russian. So Russian language, history, and culture. And this was back in 2017, so quite a while ago. So even back then, I did have an interest in language learning, but from my side as a learner, I wanted to be able to speak Russian, to be able to read and understand texts from many post-Soviet countries, as I was very interested in both Soviet history, but also Eastern European politics, because politics has always been a big area of interest for me. And when I was in university, I started to get involved in lots of language exchanges. And these were great ways of practicing both my Russian, but also helping others to learn English. And at this time, I began to teach English online, so to tutor, to help people to learn my native language. And that was almost 8 years ago now. I know I don't look it, but I am now 26, or maybe I do look like 26. I always get told that I look very young for my age. Anyway, during my studies, I had the experience of living abroad in St. Petersburg, where there I also taught English language as a little side job. I took conversation classes with students in St. Petersburg that were learning English. and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a fantastic job. And when I returned back to the UK, it was actually during COVID, or at the beginning of COVID, when things started to change very fast and I had to return home. And during my time in lockdown, I thought to myself, oh, I need to do something. I need a project. I need to work on something. So I started to teach English online. And during this time, I was also learning Russian. And I was listening to many podcasts that are a little bit similar to this one, but for Russian language. And I thought this would be great for teaching English. And when I looked, there were not too many podcasts at this time focused on easy, clear English. And a lot of the podcasts that did exist were very poor quality. So I decided I'm going to make one myself. And to be honest, back then, 5 years ago, it wasn't very good. And there were very few listeners, but I made an episode every single week. But I wasn't always very consistent. What I mean by that is I didn't make episodes every week. And there were times where I got very distracted with my studies, with my work, and I didn't make any episodes for months, sometimes even 6 months at a time. And of course, as a result, the podcast did not grow very fast. So I would be very surprised if there are still listeners from even 5 years ago. Most listeners would have started listening to this podcast within the last 2 years. But during the time that I was making these episodes, inconsistently, so not so regularly, a lot of things happened in my life. And there was an audience starting to build in the podcast, a very small one. And during this time, I actually moved back to Russia, to Moscow, to work. So I was teaching English to businesses, so to big businesses, big Western companies that were operating in Moscow. And this was up until the war started with Ukraine. And at this time, I decided to move back home. I wasn't very happy with the situation in the country, the political situation, and I didn't feel very secure, particularly with my background in politics. But I don't want to talk about politics here. And if you want to know a little bit more about my experience in Russia and why I returned back to the UK, I do have an episode about this for Patreon fans, Patreon subscribers. So you can check out the Patreon with the link in the description below. On Patreon, I talk about more personal topics from time to time. So I arrived back in the UK about 3 years ago and started a full-time job, which I still work in today. And this job requires a lot of travel. So I work in sales. I sell stuff, basically. And I travel all over Northern Ireland, a little bit of Scotland, and the Republic of Ireland too. So every day I'm in a different place with different people. And that part of the job I do enjoy. I love talking to people. I love communicating. I also got married last year. So I got married to my wonderful wife, and it's almost a year now in July. But really, in the last year, I started to take this podcast a lot more seriously. I decided that I want to really commit to regularly making episodes, and I have done that. In the last year, I have made at least one episode every week. And mostly, particularly this year, I have made at least 2 episodes every week of the podcast, sometimes even 3. but I decided that 3 podcast episodes was a little bit much each week. And in this time, we have grown from about 6,000 people on podcast, 6,000 people on Spotify, so followers, from December to over 20,000 now following the podcast. But in terms of listeners and the amount of hours that people listen to, this has grown almost 10 times, which is absolutely amazing. And the podcast has grown so fast over the last few months. This podcast, the purpose of this podcast, both 5 years ago and also today, remains unchanged. And that is to help you to learn English, to practice your listening skills. Because I understand with my time living in other countries, with listening to English content and other languages, so Russian content, how hard it is to listen to accessible audio. So audio that is not too fast, not too complicated, and that is designed for learners. But at the same time, that it's not boring. I want interesting topics. I want to feel like I'm learning new words. And of course, I want to like the person that I'm listening to. So that has been my goal, to help you. And I've done this for free for over 5 years. And really in the last year with the growth, I think I've started to work more and more on this podcast. And I now work on it for about at least 10 hours per week. So writing the scripts, getting the key vocab, recording, editing, uploading, creating thumbnails and pictures, myself as well. I do absolutely everything in my free time outside of my full-time job. And it is a lot. It's a lot of work, but I do love it. And I love seeing comments and support from you guys from all around the world. It is enough for me that you listen and support, that you follow the podcast, that you rate it 5 stars. These are all I will ever ask of you. And I never ask, and I will always keep this podcast for free and available for absolutely everyone. And although we have grown a lot, I make pretty much no money from this podcast. I still work full-time, so about 40 to 50 hours a week in my full-time job, and do this on the side as an extra. But of course, I would love to produce. This is my goal for the future of the podcast. As we grow and look to the future, I can reflect and look back on the success that we have had as a project, as a community together, the growth that we have seen, and the support that you have shown me. And in this time, I've tried to make some big quality changes. I have purchased, better equipment. So this microphone, I've started to make video podcasts on Spotify. If you're watching on video, hello. If you're listening, do check out the video podcasts as well. I post them on Spotify and YouTube too. But looking to the future, the way I see this podcast growing, I would love to do this as my full-time job so that I can make so much more content for you guys, so that I can make other podcast series, and also offer more premium content too, like courses and speaking clubs, classes where we can talk to one another live online. That is really one of my biggest goals that I would really, really love. But to do that, of course, we need to grow, and I need support as well. So all I ask is that you support and listen to the show. But if you would, and this has really helped with upgrading equipment and looking to the future, creating a Patreon has allowed you guys to support this podcast and become a closer part of the community. We currently have, I think, about it's between 10 and 15 Patreon paid supporters. And this really helps because it allows me to work on upgrading the quality of this show. So getting new microphone, updating my camera, and really focusing on making the content better for you. And on Patreon, since I've started, we've built up a catalog, so a back catalog of premium episodes, so bonus episodes where I talk about some more personal stuff. I also talk about more complicated topics and try to use faster speech to help you with your learning. There's also completely different series on there too, like news in easy English. And I do like weekly vocabulary lessons too, and even just some life updates. This is allowing me to work more on the podcast. So if you would like to become a closer part of the community, of the Easy English community, to support me and to be able to, chat to me, to send me messages, ask questions, request things, do consider joining. And it really, really helps me to work on this podcast. At the moment, we are sponsor free, so I don't do sponsorships at the current time. We're not big enough yet to get to sponsorships. So we do just have some advertisements from time to time, which are placed by Spotify. But I would absolutely love to see more of you guys join us on the Patreon. It'll be a really great time. But if you can't afford or you don't want to, it's too much for you to listen to or to get all this extra content, do not worry. It is more than enough for me and for this project that you are a listener. I call it a project because for me, this is like my baby, my project that I'm growing, hopefully, into both a business and a company to help learners around the world. But you being here, you following the show and listening is more than enough. So never feel pressured to support in any other way. Thank you so much for every comment, every kind word, and every piece of support that each and every one of you has ever left. I love seeing your comments on Spotify, on YouTube, or whatever platform that you are on. And please do find ways to write to me. I love hearing about what country you're from. I love hearing how you're doing with your English, the problems that you might be having, and seeing how I can help. Thank you so much for being a part of this show, a part of this podcast and this community. And if you're new and you're listening to this and you're joining us for the first time, welcome. And do check out our back catalogue. So all of our older episodes, there are so many topics that might interest you. But if not, don't worry. Every single week, we will have a new episode. At least one episode per week is my goal to help you to learn and improve your English. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me, and I'm very excited for the future of Easy English and the future of our community. I'm Oliver, and you've been listening to Easy English. Thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.